Hi, Zach Reiser here, and welcome back to another bass effects review video. Today is a fun day for me because it's the first time I get to dig into a pedal from Meris. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Hedra, which is a 3-voice rhythmic pitch shifter. Now, like all Meris pedals, they are deceptively complex. It has 6 knobs, 2 foot switches, but also there are secondary functions under every single knob. And specifically on the Hedra, I think it takes a little bit more kind of conceptual understanding to really dial in cool sounds on this thing. Due to the complicated nature of the Hedra, there probably will be a good amount of talking in this video, so I encourage you to look below at the timestamps of the chapters to hop around if that's your thing, but I will try to show off all the things I'm discussing with sound samples along the way. As usual, here's my bass's dry tone, Dingwall ABZ 6-string on the neck pickup. So I'm going to start with the Hedra in what I consider to be kind of like the patch initialized mode. So this is the simplest kind of baseline to create your textures on top of. So what I've done here is all 3 pitches are off, all the delay lines are off, the feedback underneath the mix knob is completely turned off, there's no microtune, there's no glide, we are in the key of C major, and the scale that's being used, as I just said, is just the major scale. So with the pedal set up like this, the Hedra will just sound like my dry bass. So to hear the effect of the pedal, we obviously have to turn on a pitch. So I'm going to turn the pitch up to a unison, and you'll hear that I have kind of almost like just a tiny little doubling effect. So now with the pitch at unison, we already have a very useful effect for bass players, and that is a very lush chorus. So if I have the microtune off, it just kind of sounds like nothing. But if I turn the microtune up here a little bit, we're going to get this lovely detuning effect on our signal. But now what we also could do to get a much more thick and dynamic chorusing effect here is to turn on the other pitches. So now instead of having one detuned voice against my dry bass, I can have 2 or 3. So let's turn pitch 2 up to unison as well, and pitch 3 up to unison with micro pitch right at noon. Now, for people who watch my channel, they know that my favorite thing about detune or chorus pedals is actually not so much on my dry bass, but it's on synth bass. So let's jump in already into some deep, kind of thick textures here. I have my Boss OC2 running 100% wet into a dark glass alpha Omicron distortion. That sounds like this by itself. Nice and fat. Now let's run this into a very thick detune setting on the Hedra. So let's get into some pitch shifting. Now I've turned the other 2 voices off for now because yet again, it's easier to dial them in, I feel like, one by one. I prefer to use my ears to dial pitch in, but obviously they've labeled the pitches for you on the knobs as well, but it's up to you. So let's start with just a diatonic third. And yet again, I'm in C major. So if I pluck a C, I can tune this up to a third. So let's play a little bit with this diatonic third sound. I'm just going to run it as it is into a little bit of reverb. Now, before getting into more static pitch shifting effects, I want to quickly show off this scale knob because it's kind of integrated into a lot of the sounds that I'm going to be using. Now, I've had it on C major so far, but underneath the key knob is the scale. So right now on major, as it sounds, it's going to be a major scale. It's harmonizing to. Now, if I switch the scale to minor, you heard it shift to minor there. Now we're harmonizing a C minor scale. So now I've switched the Hedra over to minor pentatonic. I'm still on C. And what's cool about the pentatonic harmonization is that as you play through the scale, the interval you're playing is not always going to be the same every single time. In other words, it's not always going to be a third. And if you play outside of the minor pentatonic scale, you get other interesting intervals along the way. As bass players, we got to know what downward octaves sound like. So let's try that with the Hedra. And as people know, I generally prefer analog octave down over digital, but if you don't have an analog octaver, this is a great substitute. So let's drop our pitch down an octave. And now we have an octaver. While we're on this fun downward octave sound, I do want to just show that it can get pretty heavy and pretty nasty. So I'm going to pull a pick out here. I'm going to run this downward octave sound into my Dark Glass Alpha Omicron distortion, and let's hear what that sounds like. All right, enough of the simple pitch shifting. It's time to get a little bit more complicated. So we're going to pull that third back in, but I am also going to add some other pitches to it to make a thicker chord. So pull the third in. We're going to pull a fifth in. And then I'm going to pull an octave up in as well. Now, of course, you could do any combination of pitches that are listed on the Hedra. So I'm not limited to a triad. I could make a seventh chord. I could make something denser, like more of a cluster chord by, for instance, doing maybe like a second, a third, and a fifth. That would sound like this. So hopefully by now you've heard enough of these static pitch shifting examples from the Hedra. Let's get to what really makes the Hedra inspiring and unique, in my opinion, and that's the ability to add delay and feedback to each pitch shifted voice. So going back to our kind of initialized patch here, I have just a third again. Now this is not very interesting, but let's add some delay to it. So if I turn up the clock all the way here, the secondary function, I'm getting essentially the tap on the tap tempo. So it sounds like this. So if I play something now, it's going to be rhythmically delayed by that tap. Already pretty interesting, but let's add some feedback to that. So I'm going to turn up the feedback here, secondary function of the mix knob, and now I get this. turning on a second pitch is where things get really wild. So I'm going to turn pitch 3 to a fifth, and I'm going to turn pitch 2 to a third to give me that triad sound again. Now notice what's happening here. There's no delay on the third. So the third happens immediately. The fifth comes later when the tap happens. So you get this sound. Now, of course, we could move the third to another location, so I could put it with the fifth. So now this is kind of cool because you get a chord happening on the tap. In fact, let's hear what that sounds like with that synth-based texture again. So Boss OC2 into the dark glass alpha Omicron distortion into this kind of delayed chord. So now again, I have pitch 1 on a third, pitch 2 is on an octave, pitch 3 is on a fifth, but I have no delay on pitch 1. So the third and the root of the chord are happening right on the downbeat, and then you're getting the kind of decayed pitch in that arpeggiator fashion of the octave and the fifth. So now let's get into kind of full arpeggiator mode. So same pitches, third, fifth, and octave, but now I have all of the delays on different 16th notes. So you're getting almost a straight 16th note arpeggiator run going on here. Switching that third out for 2 octaves up, I want to run this into a pretty ambient kind of multi-tap delay sound on the Strymon Volante and see what that sounds like. Now, one feature I have not even talked about yet on the Hedra is that it has a glide or a portamento between the pitches. Very, very cool textural sounds here. So let's start with an already very pretty patch. This is essentially just a full 7th chord, third, 5th, and 7th of each note. I'm in the key of E major here. It sounds like this. But now let's turn on a little bit of glide. Let's get into more of kind of a soundscape textural effect here. So this is a very long glide time. I have a 2 octave up, an octave up, and a 5th up. With my dry bass, it sounds like this. Now let's run a pure sub synth signal into this, and then we're also going to run that into that kind of ambient multi-tap delay sound on the Strymon Volante. Continuing down the sound effect side of things here, I want to switch to the mode where the pitch shifting is happening on the feedback itself. It is a very unique and interesting sound. So let's dive into that a little bit here. So in normal operation, if I had a fifth running here, this is what it would sound like. It's a fifth up, but every tap is still the same pitch. But if I go to the mode where the pitch shifting is happening on the feedback line, it continually kicks it up a fifth every single tap, and it sounds like this. You can hear with high feedback, it gets super weird, digital, aliased, all this weird stuff happens on the end of the note, and honestly, it's very, very harsh, but let's hear what that sounds like. So now I've turned the feedback down a little bit, and I've added in an octave as well at a different subdivision, and now you're essentially getting a crystals effect. Let's go ahead and take that crystals effect and run it into my Moog low-pass filter just to give it some movement. This is another kind of just glitched out sound. So this is back to the fifth, but I have no delay on here, but I do have feedback. And so it's continually adding a fifth over and over on top of itself, and you get this almost just robotic sounding harmonization. Same idea, except I've added an octave up. So now we have a fifth and an octave, no delay, but a lot of feedback in that mode where the feedback is continually being pitch shifted. And I'm going to run my Boss OC2 into this for just, yet again, kind of this robotic, weird pitch shifted sound. To finish things out here, I want to go back to that minor pentatonic scale. In particular, I'm running in D minor pentatonic here. And yet again, the reason I really enjoy this particular scale type is because you have less predictable intervals as you go up and down the scale. So this has got a lot of feedback, different delays, different pitches, a little bit of glide. Let's just hear what that sounds like. This is just the Hedra. So in this particular minor pentatonic one, I have an octave happening at the same time I play my note, and then I have kind of a third and a fifth in the minor pentatonic realm happening on the dotted eighth at the same time. So this is the last sound sample for you, and this is one of my favorite sounds on the Hedra. It's in the minor pentatonic mode, and I'm playing essentially a cluster chord, so I have all of those sounds kind of crammed together, and there's very little delay difference, but they're all very close to my actual notes, so it gives me kind of that rolled harp sound. So with just the Hedra, it sounds like this. And now, since I can't really add feedback directly with the Hedra because the delays are so short, I'm going to add it with my Strymon Volante. So that is my demo of the Hedra from Meris. And as you saw, it is a very interesting, inspiring, but also very complicated pedal to really dig into. And I by no means got to every feature or every sound that the Hedra can offer. So I definitely recommend going and checking out Meris's videos and any other videos out there on the Hedra to learn more and more about what this thing can really bring. But I hope that I gave you a good overview of what it sounds like on bass and what it can add to your playing. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It really does help me out, and I will be back very shortly with more pedals and effects demo videos as well as some performance videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.